All right, you're welcome back. It's still TVC Breakfast here. Now, the former Director General of the National Intelligence Agency, Ayodele Oke, and his wife, Folashade, would know their fate today when they appear before the Federal High Court in Lagos.
Yes, and they're facing a 4-count charge of money laundering and corruption after a huge sum of money was found in an apartment in Ikoyi, Lagos. The EFCC has also filed a 10-count charge against former Secretary to the government of the Federation, Babachir Lawal. The development comes 1 week after Vice President Yemi Osinbajo said President Muhammadu Buhari had prevailed on the anti-corruption agencies to prepare criminal charges against Mr. Lawal and Mr. Oke. All right, we have Executive Director, Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, Adetokunbo Mumuni, joining us for this discussion. Good to have you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here.
How did this come to you that it actually took the President's directive to the anti-corruption agencies to have a prosecution, process against former SGM, Babachir Lawal, and the NIA boss?
Good. Let me say, it took almost eternity for we to have what we are now seeing. But the truth of the matter is that those who run our anti-corruption bodies, it's like they have this tendency to look at the man at the end of affair to give specific directive when it comes to people close to them. But that should not have been the case. It is never like that when you hear FBI in America pursuing corruption matters. But it's better late than never.
But they do have, what does that say of their independence to operate and ensure that people who have been alleged to have been engaged in corrupt practice are brought to in a book? When you keep looking to the man at the helm of the affairs,
and the body language,
to give you directive before you do your job.
Because that is not part of the law that constituted EFCC or ICPC. By the law that sets them up, they are supposed to be independent.
Yes.
But that is what we have repeatedly. Because that should not ordinarily be the case according to the law that we have. But you know, in Africa, we look at the big sheriff in town most of the time, depends on the end of affair. But that should not be it.
But again, it does appear, people have been saying that, look, the Vice President finished the report and handed it over to the President, even on the floor of the National Assembly. The charges were, laid out. He was found culpable, and all of that. And now now that charges have been brought against him, people are saying, look, this does appear to be like, okay, let it look like we are fighting, corruption, and all of that, because it took so long to execute the action.
Well, let me tell you this. There are evidence that can stand the test of judicial scrutiny. It is not enough to say you have evidence, because lawyers are technical people, and the rule about criminal prosecution generally is that you have to prove your case beyond reasonable doubt. So it is not as if you must have evidence, you must have cogent, admissible, and credit evidence. And that is what can be
you can clearly defend and
yes, that is what is important. And that is why I say it took some time, but I don't, the boy that I know and that I still know is not in the habit of influencing anything. You remember when the issue of getting to the National Assembly and those that would be there came up, he said he was not interested. And that's why we have a lot of problems that we have. In every...
So either way, it's almost like a no-win situation for the President's attitude when it comes to what some may term as aloofness on his part in interfering.
Yes.
If he interfered, it's one problem. If he didn't, it's another. So I mean, it's almost like you find yourself between the devil and the... catch-22 situation.
Yeah.
Well, let's find out if you know what The charges brought against Ayodele Oke and his wife are, that's of course for Lashade, by the EFCC. They've been accused of indirectly concealing the sum of 43,449,947 dollars. To just keep it simple, $43 million in an Ikoyi apartment here in Lagos. And also they used the sum of $1 million, that's about $1.5 million, to acquire a flat in Ikoyi, Lagos.
Yes, directly retaining federal government's property worth $160,777,136, and directly converting federal government's property worth $160,777,166 to personal use. Well, these are some of the charges against Mr.
Okay?
Yes. Now let's talk about Babachir Lawal,
the former SGF.
Yes, he's accused of misappropriating funds meant for the rehabilitation of the Northeast, as well as persons affected by a Boko Haram insurgency while he was head of the Presidential Initiative for Northeast.
Yes, also known as PINE. Mr. Babachir Lawal allegedly awarded a contract of 200 million naira to his company, Roller Vision, to cut grass.
Yes.
At this point, let's bring in our other guest who is in our Abuja studio. He's a lawyer, Daniel Buala. Good morning and thanks for joining us on the show this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Great. I wonder what your thoughts are concerning this, prosecution that may be coming the way of former Secretary to the Government of the Federation, SGF, Babachir Lawal, and of course the former NIA, that's the intelligence agency boss, Ayo Oke. What are your thoughts? Because it took the president's directive for this to happen.
Right. It's a welcome development because the anti-corruption fight, it must be seen to be holistic. In other words, it must be a fight that reflects the entirety of the Federation. If you're a member of the political party or of this government and you commit offense, then you should be able to, answer for it. And so I welcome that development. There are individuals who will complain that it took eternity for this to happen. The answer is simple. Our criminal justice system does not have statute of limitation. It means however long it takes, if you commit a crime, you will face the wrath of the law. And the reason is because investigation sometimes may take a long time. There are other times investigation might be for a short period of time. And the reason is because the burden of proof placed on the prosecution to prove every element constituting the offense for which the accused person is charged must be proved beyond reasonable doubt. And for you to be able to gather evidence and do that, you must do proper investigation to get direct evidence, to get corroborative evidence, to get all that is needed so that when you charge the person to court, you will be able to prove the element constituting the offense and get the conviction. So in a nutshell, and on a peripheral level, investigation can take a long time or short time depending on the available evidence that is secured. And however long it takes, prosecuting the criminals is the most important thing.
Let me stay with you, Daniel, before we come to our guest right here in the studio. Does it seem to you then that based on, antecedents of the EFCC so far, now with this 10-count charge against Babachir Lawal, that all the elements that you need to have a successful prosecution is now there?
Well, in framing charges, it's important that prosecution sometimes adopt the strategy of framing charges for which they can secure quick convictions or charges that are germane. For example, you can frame 10-count charge, 9 of which might just be for minor offenses, but 1 may be cardinal. There used to be a time when EFCC will frame 90 charges, but over a period of time, EFCC has learned its lesson. Because when you frame too much charge, you need to prove it. It takes a long time. After 10 years, prosecution is not, conviction is not secured. So when you frame up something like 9, it means it is 9 charges for which the accused is charged that the prosecution has probably enough evidence in terms of real evidence, in terms of circumstantial evidence, in terms of exhibit to be able to prove that. So I believe for EFCC to have come with 9 charges, then the EFCC must have prepared to secure conviction on all of the elements.
All right, let's come back to you here in the studio. Staying on that question, the EFCC apparently, as the lawyer said, may have learned a number of lessons, because a number of high-profile cases have been bungled because of this. But in the case of this one, do you think that EFCC may have done its due diligence in trying to get all the necessary and support evidence to ensure that they bring this one to logical conclusion?
Good. One cannot sit outside the court and start assessing the evidence that will be presented in court. That is very, very important. But I even believe that it is not the enormity of the charges that you charge an accused person with that will lead to success. I believe that look at the offense that you are bringing against an accused person. Look at the level, the seriousness of the evidence that you have, the concreteness of the evidence that you have, whether circumstantial or direct. That is what would eventually lead to success. Because the standard, as we have known, is proving beyond reasonable doubt. And you see, if the offense has 10 elements, if you are able to prove 9, and you are not able to prove the last one, the rule is that the accused must be given the benefit of the doubt. So let us hope that what they now have, they can fly with it. It will meet the standard expected in a criminal prosecution, so that we'll have...
But would it have been more comforting for you to know that investigations really have been ongoing up until the point where the president gave that directive to the EFCC and, of course, other anti-corruption agencies to go ahead and prosecute the SGF and Ayoke, because these people, they've been working. Babachir Lawal has been leading the campaign charge in Adamawa, his homestead, up until now.
And let's hope the needful has been done, because investigation of crime is one thing, assembling of witness another matter, and prosecution actually in court and bringing the evidence that you have gathered in court is another thing. Investigation might have been perfect if there are no hanky-panky. The level of investigation and how thorough you have done it should manifest in court by what you bring. And so that when you now bring it and the lawyer on the defense side now faces you, start asking questions under cross-examination, you are able to sustain your evidence. That is very, very important.
All right, let's go back to Abuja now. Daniel, I read somewhere last night that Mr. Oke and his wife have traveled out of the country. Well, so what happens now?
Well, the court, you can be charged to court and can be tried in absentia. You can also be tried in person, depending on the nature of the offense and the exigency. Company can also be tried criminally. But let me just make a little clarification from what my learned friend over there said, so that the viewers can understand. If there are 9 count charges framed against an accused person, and so each of the charges has elements, and in proving it, you must prove the mental element and the causation, that he actually took the money and he meant to defraud the government. Because NIA, by its clandestine operation, it could be that the money may have been kept for clandestine operation and it may be justified. But the prosecution must prove that even if he is saying that as a defense, he actually defrauded the government by not disclosing it or by keeping it. So every charge, every count, you must prove the element. And in proving that, you must prove these factors in criminal law. If you are able to prove 6 of the charges and you are unable to prove 3 of the charges, it doesn't mean the accused person will be free in all. It means that the 3 that you're unable to prove, he is going to be found guiltless. But the 6 you are able to prove, he's going to be found guilty. So each count is treated on its own merit. And that is why in criminal law and in criminal trial, you will hear they will say, on count this, the accused person is free. On count this, the accused person is found guilty. So that's the clarification I wanted to make.
Now, what
evidence?
Present. Yes. Now, what exactly will the court or the prosecution be relying on? Would it be the evidence or the findings by, number one, the Senate Committee on the Northeast, and of course the added investigation by the Vice President that was submitted to, you know, the presidency? What I mean, help us understand what, you know, I mean, if you were a judge were in court, what would he be relying on to come to a decision? Right.
So in criminal trial, when you file charges against an accused person, there is what we call précis of evidence. The précis of evidence consists of exhibits. It consists of all that is required to be able to prove it, including witnesses and the documents they will tender. So you have exhibits, and the document can also be the findings of the Senate, can be the findings of the Anti-Graft Commission. It can be the findings of any other independent body that is able to come up with something that can be relied upon to establish the causation and then the mental element of taking that money or defrauding the federal government. So all of these things are needed, and if they have it, these are the things they have to prove. But the criminal law suggests that if you charge somebody, you must prove. So for example, if count one, there are about 5 elements that put together will consist the proof of that count. Then each of these 5 must be proved. If you prove 4, you fail to prove 1, then on that count, the accused person will be guiltless. That is why it is said that you must prove beyond reasonable doubt. And the courts have held that beyond reasonable doubt does not mean beyond every shadow of doubt. It means establish it to the point where the judge can be convinced that indeed the offense has been committed. So this is all that the anti-graft agency needs to do or needs to prove. And if you have seen over a period the kind of conviction that EFCC have secured over a period of 3 years, you will know that they are ready for whatever they are going into. And that even the perception index that was released a few days ago, how that Nigerian perception index has risen. So EFCC is up to the task. I believe in that. And I believe that whatever investigation they have done it well. And for them to have come with 9 count charges instead of 20 or 30, then they are ready for the work.
Okay. All right, Daniel, quite a number of individuals have been...
We'll have to let Daniel go.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Daniel Boala, a lawyer, talking to us in our Abuja studio. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Right,
of course, the next question is for our guest right here.
In the studio here. Right. I was going to ask Daniel, quite a number of individuals have been high profile at that. Julie Nyame, Bala and Gilar, these were ex-governors sent to jail under this fight against corruption. It will show that we are in the right direction, doesn't it?
Very well, very well. All that one should ask on the people that are prosecuting is to up their game so that we see more conviction. Nobody is expecting a rubber stamp judiciary. You prove your case, you stand by it or you fall by it. So that is the point that must be clearly made.
Let me bring this point that's been on the front burner of national discourse concerning what the presidential candidate of the PDP said, you know, that he would actually grant amnesty to looters if they surrendered. And some are saying, no, why should you do that? And others are saying, yeah, it's been, you know, it's a system that worked elsewhere, in Russia, in Turkey, for example, that could even mark a new beginning for Nigeria in fighting corruption.
No. I don't think what should happen is to make a suggestion of something like an amnesty for those who are engaged in corruption. It is different
if they surrender.
No. It's different from plea bargain.
Okay.
A plea bargain is part of the criminal process. That is what happens in Turkey. That is what happened in other crimes. No crime in the world will say, I adopt a policy of granting amnesty to looters. It is not
But
possible.
don't you think amnesty would apply? Because the general environment up until now has been, yes, it's okay to put your hand in the public till, because really it's come to be accepted. And until we as a people decide that we don't want to continue along this trajectory.
And that is why amnesty, a blanket amnesty to looters, should not be part of what we think about.
To you, what has been the greatest challenge in terms of fighting corruption in this country?
You see, the major and the obvious challenge that I see is the weakness of the criminal justice system generally in Nigeria. So before we can say we are fighting corruption, we should look to reforming our criminal justice system so that things and institutions will work as effectively as we desire.
And we have been fighting corruption for how many years now? Since 3.5 years now. And we're still not doing well as far as perception is concerned, that Nigeria is still one of the worst corrupt countries on earth, according to Transparency International. Though we seem to have gained one step or something, how does this really reflect on the whole anti-corruption war?
You see, once people are charged and their prosecution is bungled, the ordinary Nigerian will say, when you say so much money has been stolen, and they will say, what happens? This is not the first time we'll be hearing it. So we have to up our game in forensic investigation, in criminal and serious prosecution, so that we can have the best result in conviction.
But have we been able to define exactly what we mean by corruption? Because it is more than just, stealing money from the public till. Don't you think that corruption, if we were able to define it, give it a broader definition, then we would actually be able to give it the kind of treatment that it requires?
You see, all our criminal legislation make clear, abundant definition for whatever we regard as corruptive acts. So the question is not a question of have we defined it clearly, but the question that I think we should start addressing ourselves is how do we investigate whatever we say is corruption? How do we prosecute effectively whatever we say is corruption, so that what we expect, criminal conviction, will follow.
Director General, Social, Economic and Accountability Project, Mr. Detukumbo Momoni, thank you very much indeed for coming to share your thoughts with us.
It is a pleasure being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.